Today, we are talking about what are some of the best investment strategies. So, why are we talking about best investment strategies today? Well, as everybody knows, we're going into the 3 day on Friday. So, Friday morning, we'll see most of you guys at the 3 day event. And the reason why we wanted to kind of cover this today is that as we go into it, what we need to think about is that a lot of times, whenever most people get started with real estate, the way it kind of happens is that it's kind of one of two things. Some of us come to real estate because we see that as a way of entrepreneurship, as a way of being, quote unquote, an investor. And that's how we see it. There's a second crowd of people that comes to real estate, and that is they want to retire. They want to use real estate as a medium of supplementing or adding to their retirement, right? That's kind of two ends of it. Now, to kind of put that in perspective, a lot of people, especially if they come to real estate and if they come to real estate at a younger age because they're the entrepreneur type, or if they hear a ad on TV, hey, do you want to flip a house like this, that sort of thing, right? That's a huge percentage of the crowd, a huge percentage, right? And in that, we'll kind of break this down into three types of people. Number one is that person, which is the no job person. Hey, I don't like to have a job. I want to be independent. I want to do whatever the hell I want when I want on my same terms, right? The idea of that is very sexy, right? It's very sexy. The idea of basically being I'm my own boss, self-employed type. Most people in real estate, meaning real estate agent, mortgage officers, those type of people, they are I'm my own boss people. The challenge with them is this, right? And there's a lot of them that are very hardworking people that take a lot of pride in what they do. So hear me very carefully what I'm going to say, because this is not meant to be a disparaging remark, but this is unfortunately the truth. And I was one of those people, and that is that I'm going to do it my way, right? Or the highway, right? That type of personality, because I think I have better, smarter ideas than other people, right? And the reason I'm saying that is that if you look at the person, that the average real estate person that is a average agent, the income even today is less than $50,000, right? Most agents don't make that much money. Most loan officers don't make that kind of money. And this is not a derogatory. Now, there are some agents that make a lot of money. They're very good, hardworking agents. But if we look at as an industry, people who are in the title business, people who are attorneys, this includes attorneys, by the way, right? The average attorney makes less than $70,000. It's just a fact, right? People who are real estate agents, people, mortgage officers, and I'm picking on them because I happen to come from that industry, that as an average, less than 3% of all properties are owned by people who are supposed to be selling you that particular product or who are connected to the product. And why I say that is for this reason, that when you think about what is the best investment strategy, what we all want to think about is, okay, what do I do today that I can make money with, right? And if I'm going to do something sexier, smarter, more difficult, that has more bells and whistles to it, we all are kind of attracted towards the shinier object than doing something very boring, right? If you do something very boring, it's like, oh my God, you just own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties. Well, what if you own 100, 200, 500 of them, right? Rather than trying to go a little bit bigger. So if we think about it from that perspective, and this is something that we're going to focus on during 3 day, what is the quickest way to get from where you're at to your goal, whatever your goal may be, right? For some people, it may be, and for goal cannot be a goal based on number of properties. It cannot be a goal based on, I want to buy 10 multifamilies. The goal has to be money specific, meaning I want to have X amount of cash flow income this year or next year or year after. Now the question is, what is the quickest way to get there, right? And same thing with flips. If somebody says, well, I want to do 2 flips, the question is why? See, it shouldn't be that I want to do 2 flips. The goal should be, hey, I want to make $40,000 and I want to do flips, right? Now you have to question, is flipping the best way to make $40,000 in the quickest format, right? That is important. So let's first understand where we are in the market. And this is something that is really, really important to understand. We are in one of the best markets and I'm saying this correctly, knowing that today is what, February 22nd, 2023. We're in one of the best times in real estate we've been. Now, the last time, and I'll explain this, in 2008, the time was not as good as it today. And I started in 2008, January 14, 2008, so I can compare the two. And the reason it was not because there were no lenders on the back end, right? So if you wanted to do loans, there were no lenders, right? That was the biggest problem. Today, your interest rates are a little bit high, meaning rather than a commercial loan being 5%, right? If you're doing a 30-year fixed product on a 2 or 3 unit property, your rate is going to be somewhere around 7.5, 7.6, 7.8. Like I did a loan today, the rate was somewhere around 7.7 for a 30-year fixed. And why that is good? See, here's the reason why it is good. Because even though the rates are up a little bit, what has happened is there's a lot of lenders. Now, the lenders have been shaken up, but there are a lot of lenders. So if you're an astute investor in today's market, you can still continue to buy properties. That's the great part. In 2008, there was so much distress in the market that even if you could buy properties at really, 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 really good prices, unless you had just cash in your pocket, it was very, very, very difficult because you couldn't find as many lenders that would lend you the money to be able to buy it. Like today, you can put 10% down on a property that is absolute trashed. Buy that property, right, with 10% down, and they will give you 100% of the rehab, right? This didn't exist in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Today, you can buy a rental property and rehab it, and then when you go to refinance it, you can literally get all the investment out, right? You don't need, it's not based on a job, it's not based on, as long as the property itself cash flows, you can do that. So why is it a good market today? Is because of this reason, that the general public that was buying like crazy in the last 2 years, they're out of the market because interest rates are high. The amateur investors that were in the market that were creating a chaos for out of the whole market, those people are out. So guess what it makes it for who it's a great market? It's a great market for you and I because the average homeowner is not as aggressive. So what it does is when it's bad for the homeowners, it's really good for us as long as the money is available in the market, right? See, in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, number one, I obviously didn't know what I know today, of course, right? But at the time, it was very hard to do deals because you had to go raise money. I had to collect money, $20,000, $30,000 from a bunch of people that I knew to be able to do one deal, right? And that was just where we were. And that's how we started. Yet today, the good part is that we're in a market where there's still a lot of money supply. The homeowners are not buying, but guess who it gives a great chance for? It gives a great chance for you, the smart investor. Now, if you're brand new, then you need to get smart, right? You need to learn, hence the reason for coming to 3-Day. So when we talk about what are the best investment strategies, right? What I want to bring to the front is this, that in real estate, there are really only two things that you're doing. Either you're doing a flip or you're doing a rental. Everything else is a form of the two. So if you do a wholesale, what is it? You're flipping a contract. That's basically doing a flip. You're just not buying the property. Sometimes you're buying it, immediately putting it right back on the market, and you're moving it out. Right? So if you're doing a flip, what most people know as, you're buying it, rehabbing it, and reselling it for a profit. Doesn't matter if it's with a single family, if it's with a duplex, if it's with a triplex, if it's with a bigger property, it really doesn't make any difference. It's basically a flip, which is you're in and out is what you're trying to do. And the quicker you can do that, the better it is because your net amount of time in it is less, right? Would you rather put 10 hours into something and then make $10,000? If you put 10 hours into it and you made $10,000 in terms of time, guess what you made per hour? You made $1,000. But if you held on to the property for 6 months and then you made $30,000, you're like, well, Andrew, I made more. Well, no, you didn't, because if you put in 80 hours in doing that, per hour rate, you actually made less. And I know most of us don't think about it that way. What we have to think about is that it's not just the amount of money you make, right? It's the amount of time you put in versus the amount of money you make. And more so, it's not just the amount of time you put in, the amount of money you make. It's about, is it repeatable? And do you have to run on the treadmill, or does somebody have to do the running for you? So what strategies today are making sense, right? Now, if you had asked me this, say year before or last year, right? If you were doing wholesales, I mean, literally, there were so many wholesales. So wholesalers that were making money that it was not even funny. The last 3, 4, 5 years, in fact, as a whole for wholesalers has been amazing, right? Never in the history of this nation have we had this many wholesalers doing this many wholesales. Because number one, today with YouTube, with something like what we're doing today, information is available freely today, right? And so this whole concept 10, 15, 20 years ago, before the invention of YouTube and internet and all this stuff, this information wasn't available. You had to go to some sort of a meeting, you had to go buy a book, you had to buy an infomercial. Now today, you can hear about all of this sitting home, right? So my point is this, that it was very, 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 very profitable to do wholesales. Now, or you could do flips. If you had the wherewithal to do flips, especially in the last year and a half or 2 years. Now I'm going back about 8 months, so prior to the last 8 months. It was very profitable because you could literally, if you bought the property correctly, especially, the market was rising so quick that even if you made a mistake, it made up for the mistake. So those two strategies were very profitable depending on which one you picked. Now, rentals during that time, what happened, right? The taxes obviously have continued to go up. If you're in a place like Chicago or the suburbs, the taxes have continued to go up. Well, but so have the rents. And what was happening was people were buying properties, and on the back end, the property prices were climbing, so the property was worth a lot more, right? So was rental profitable? This was incredibly profitable. But the problem with rentals was this: you couldn't find as many properties to buy because there were too many flippers and there were too many wholesalers mucking up the system. So actually today, if you look at it, your rentals are more profitable as we speak in today's market. Why? Because there are not as many flippers and wholesalers getting in your way and messing up the whole thing. That's why it's become incredibly profitable to be doing basically rentals today. Now, there's another change in the market. What is even more profitable today is something called a mid-term rental, right? Today, if I was to pick a strategy, right, I would pick a mid-term rental strategy in markets where you can do mid-term rentals. It's certainly more profitable than doing long-term rentals, and it's certainly more profitable than doing Airbnbs. Now, let me explain what I mean by that, right? That if you look at our portfolio as a whole, or Mastery's portfolio as a whole, we have about 1,200 people or so in Mastery with 18,000 plus properties owned. So now the question becomes is that on those, if you look at the average cash flow of people, it's going to be somewhere around $500 per property, and 99% of people are not going to have any money invested out of pocket, right? Meaning they bought the property, rehabbed it, there's going to be 30% equity, so they can get all their money out. So now they have about 500 is a normal number we use. Now, it can be in some properties 375, in other properties be 700. So 500 is a number in between. Now, that's not true across the country, right? Across the country, people don't buy with that much equity because Chicago has been the number one market, number one since 2010 for the price that you can buy the property for relative to rent, right? The relative price in Chicago for as big a market, there's no other market as in none, zero, finito, right? Zero market in the whole country, which is as big a town as Chicago is, because we're the third largest city in terms of population, and that has pricing that is as inexpensive relative to rent. I'm not saying Chicago is the cheapest. What I'm saying is relative to rent, that ratio of the average pricing in any zip code relative to the rent that you can get there. That is one of the highest in the nation in Chicago, that relativity, because it's not whether an area has the highest rent that is important. What is important is whether in relation to what the properties cost to buy, if the that rent is high, right? That's what is important. So if you go to Indiana, for example, right, a property where you're going to get $2,000 in rent is going to cost you a lot more. Now, the taxes are going to be a lot cheaper, but the property will cost you more. Maryville is an example of that, right? That the property will cost you more. You come towards Lansing, suddenly the property won't be as expensive, but the taxes relatively are higher, right? And your rent in Lansing is going to be much higher than you're going to get in Maryville. That's just a fact of life. So if you think about that strategy today, that strategy makes a lot of sense to buy more rental properties. And if you're doing a midterm with these rentals, what happens with Airbnb is this. A lot of times people look at the short-term rental income on a property. And whenever you look at the short-term rental income on a property, it should be minimum 2 to 2.5 times of your net income, what you're going to get on a regular property. So I'll give you guys an example. So if I have a property that I have rented it out and every single month net income is $500 a month, right? If I'm going to do an Airbnb, minimum, I'm looking for, which is a short-term rental, I'm looking for about 2.5 times minimum, ideally 3 times the income between doing a regular long-term rental or I'm going to do an Airbnb. Why would I do it otherwise? Why am I going to have a property manager that's going to have a lot of people in and out? My property is going to get used more. It's got to be maintained up to a better standard and all those sorts of additional expenses. Why would I want to do that, right? So clearly here you get good revenue depending on the town, if they allow it, if it's the right place, so on and so forth, which we'll discuss during 3-day. But you know what the happy medium is? The happy medium is in between, which is 30-day plus rentals, right? People that are coming from out of a property because the property had a fire. There's insurance reasons. People are coming to town for work, right? In average bread and butter suburbs, right? These are not Airbnbs that are in a vacation spot, mind you. Right? This is very different. Most people, when they think about an Airbnb, they think about it in, oh my God, I'm going to be in the mountains. I'm going to be by ocean. I'm going to be by Disneyland. I'm going to be by some sort of a quote unquote entertainment, or I call them exotic Airbnbs, right? It's the simple, boring Airbnbs or the boring mid-term rentals. What do I mean by midterm rentals? Midterm rentals meaning where people stay minimum of 30 days, right? Why? The reason behind that is this. Generally, and this is generally, that if you have a property manager, like for all the rentals we have, right, 200-300 rentals, we have an in-house property manager that's in-house in the office. And then we have all the rentals that are the Airbnbs, right? That we're doing, scaling up with those, right? That's basically generally anywhere from about 20% is generally what a Airbnb manager charges, right? But the happy medium in between is that if you have a midterm rental, you get almost as much income, almost, not quite, but almost as much income that you get with the short-term rental, and that's the happy medium where you can almost double up your cash flow. So one of the key strategies today, one of the best methods of investing is if you look at the midterm strategy. Now, the next stage, let's look at what about multifamily, right? Multifamily has been hotter than hot, right? Unless you're a very shrewd investor or unless you're buying properties that are a massive value add, right? If they're massive value add, what do I mean by that? You're buying the building. So I'll use an example from Mastery. Somebody's buying a building. It's about $1 million. You need to do about $300,000 in work. The back end, the value is somewhere around 2.6. That makes perfect sense. But for properties that are performing properties, a lot of times because of the high interest rates today, right, and because still there is a lot of money in the market, still per unit multifamilies, they're trading at a very high price today. So if you look at it as an average, now there are always deals that exist out there. If you can find those, then it can be incredible because you can buy 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 units at one shot, right? But unless you can find that, and it is much, much more difficult for an average investor. If you want to make, listen guys, you want to make $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million in net worth, easiest way to do it is with smaller properties. If you want 10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in net cash flow every single month. This is not a year. We're talking about every single month. Easiest way to do it is with smaller properties. Not that it's not a good idea to buy a bigger one, right? You give me the right bigger property, which has the right numbers all day long. But why? Because with the smaller properties, given the market that we're in, there's less competition. See, people who are well off still have money, right? It's not, the interest rates don't phase them. The interest rates phases the average homeowner that's trying to buy it, the average investor that's trying to get in real estate. So that's where you make the most amount of hay. Well, what about another strategy today that's working? Another strategy, a lot of people are doing creative financing, right? That's working. Why? Because the interest rates are high. So if you can take the property over from a seller and lock it in at a lower rate, right? Lock it in at a lower rate, and it's the right circumstance, then it makes sense. So out of 100 deals that you look at, and this is something that where creative financing people go wrong. This is something that you need to pay attention to. A lot of times what people will do is, but Andrew, it's a property. If I can just get creative with it, I'm going to do it. Guys, listen, on 99.99% of the deals, it doesn't make sense to do creative financing. It makes sense to just buy it straight out. Why? Because you can discount if you can discount the price enough, it makes sense to buy it. Just to get creative for the sake of being creative and put some sort of creativity in terms of financing, it doesn't make sense. But whenever the interest rates are high compared to the rate that somebody has locked in, somebody has a 3.2, 3.4, 3.5, 4%, 4.2, and your rates today on a commercial loan are hovering at 7.5%, right? Or the property is owned free and clear. And then it makes sense to do subject to type of situations. That opportunity, every time the market flips and the rates are up and there's a considerable delta between the rates that are set rates or free and clear properties versus rates today, creative financing gets very, very popular. The problem with creative financing is this. If you don't know what you're doing, number one, it's not a beginner strategy at all whatsoever, period, right? At all. So if you're somebody who's brand new, highly suggest you not do it. This is just, there are easier ways of making money. And the point is not to be not to do exciting things. The point should be is how boring a strategy can I pick? Because boring strategies are the ones that make the most amount of money. You don't need to do fancy things in real estate to make a good amount of money. The more the pieces that are moving in real estate, the more the chances of something going wrong. What about in terms of commercial, right? Commercial is a interesting strategy. If you look at the self-storage space today, if you look at the flex space today, if you look at the space like commercial, meaning office building, like we happen to be in an office building, which is about a 15,000 square foot building that we bought last year, right? It's not a good space to be in. And the reason I say it's not a good space to be in is because guess what? More and more people are working from home. Now, for our purposes and for Mastery, this works. So but still, if you look at the space in general, office space generally, unless you're a very seasoned pro, it's not a place to be in. Same thing with retail, unless there's a specific place. But yet, if you look on the other side of it, if you look at self-storage, if you look at light industrial, if you look at flexible commercial space, that's a very profitable space to be in if you know how to build that type of space, or if you know how to buy those type of properties, right? Mobile homes have done better than they ever have. That's another space to be in. So as the market is changing, what's happening is some of the strategies get incrementally better with the market. But yet, one of the biggest things that what we have seen in the last 4 to 5 years, I'm going to say, which is a newer strategy, and that happens to be that people are willing to pay 3, 4, 5 years ago for a 1,800 square foot, 2,000 square foot home. You would never have people stay in a property for 30, 60, 90 days and pay $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 in rent. But yet, guess what today? The market has dramatically shifted. And this shift was happening even before Corona. But yet Corona kicked it into high gear. Today, you can rent properties on a midterm rental that are barely 1,800 square feet. And people every single month will pay you $5,000 to $6,000 on a property that's nothing but 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a basement. Now, It has to be the right location, of course, right? But these are everyday bread and butter, boring houses in boring places in America. This is a absolute chasm that has happened. And if you're really, really smart, you'll buy properties in good locations, and you'll see that big push this 3-day on Friday, that this is something that you really have to latch on to. So if you ask me what is the best strategy today, the best strategy is how do you get to your income level that you want to be at. So if that is $5,000 a month, if that is $10,000 a month, the question you should ask is not should I do this or should I do this? What you have to think about is like, should I do single families, should I do multifamilies? The question you should look at is my goal is to get to $5,000 a month. What is the best strategy that will get me there first, right? So when you think about the best strategy for somebody who's worth millions and millions of dollars is going to be a little bit different than when you're getting started. When you're getting started or when you're scaling your business, you have to think about the best strategy at that moment in time. Having said that, I hope this inspired some thoughts. I want to thank Ms. Denise from Guaranteed Rate for sponsoring today's live, as well as Brolio from State Farm. As most of you guys know, the VIP tickets for the 3-day are sold out. So no more VIP lunches anymore. You are welcome to join us for general admissions. Difference between general admissions versus VIP is that the VIP people have specific lunches that are available all 3 days, and they get to meet and talk to the speakers and all that kind of stuff, which basically we have a limited number of those spots, so that is gone. But the general admissions is still open. You're obviously welcome to talk to all the speakers. They'll be there, but if you want to have one-on-one time with them, then you have to go VIP. So having said that, hope you guys enjoyed some of these thoughts. We're super thrilled. If you're from Mastery, look forward to seeing you at the 3-day. If you're not still, welcome to the 3-day. If you have any friends or family that are coming and you haven't registered them, it's important that you let Lori know. Otherwise, go to andrewholmesevents.com. That's andrewholmesevents.com to register. Still, there is time for you to show up and get registered to come to the 3-day event. Thanks a bunch, and we'll see you guys on Friday.